Hi and welcome back to my second little podcast here about UFOs. What did I tell you? I chose that to be the title because I think that's perfect in this time with disclosure going on, the hearing in America about UFOs existing and about back engineering projects. Last time I spoke a little bit about William Whitecrow, the death of William Whitecrow, some of the projects he worked on, some of the CIA involvement in it, and today I'm gonna continue a little bit in that direction because I want to talk about some of my own experiences. After the disclosure, things have changed. I experienced from very early age to be laughed at because I spoke about UFOs and aliens landing here and walking among us already from the age of 4. So I've been through the whole meal of being ridiculed, laughed at, and they are not existing and you're making it up in your mind, even though there have been other witnesses seeing the same. It's still me who have made it up, or I have seen Venus, or I have seen a helicopter. And that started already for me back in 84. It must have been about 84, 85 when I had my first experience. But I also want to tell a little bit about why and how I've become an anomaly hunter and UFO believer and enthusiast. I used to say I don't believe in UFOs. I know they're here. I don't believe I know. And I will still say that I don't believe I know. But people will ask me, do you believe in UFOs? And I will, of course, say, yes, I do. And this is my story I'm telling today. My first experience with UFOs, there's two kind of experiences. Experiences with UFOs as a flying craft that is flying with light in the air. And there's experiences with beings that's not necessarily related to seeing a UFO. But I would like to talk about my experiences with UFOs today. And when I was 4 years old, my first experience was that I was crossing this road. I was living in a city called Kalundborg on Zealand in Denmark, on an old dairy milk production place factory that was converted into living. And we moved there in about 81, 82. And it was a semi-busy road. There were some cars and some of them drove pretty fast. And I was 4 years old. I have been over playing in the playground on the other side of the road and had to walk back and cross the road. And remember, we're talking in the 80s. We were left to ourselves and we learned ourselves how the traffic worked because we were just sent out to play and we did it and we drove around on our bikes. And at that time, things were different. But anyway, I had to cross this road and I stood there, looked to the left and I looked to the right and I looked again and again. There was no car coming and I walked. And the last thing I hear is these 4 wheels squealing when the car that hit me tried to brake and he couldn't manage to brake the car in time. I got hit by this car, ended up underneath the car, and I was knocked out. I don't remember being hit. I remember waking up underneath the car and looking up, and I could see the bottom of the car, but I could also hear my mom panicking in the background and people talking to my mom. And at that moment, I got sort of annoyed. And remember, I'm only 4 years old. I got annoyed that I could hear my mom, but I couldn't see her. And I really got, oh, that's so annoying when I can hear her. Where are you? And the moment I had that thought, I looked straight through the car like it was a transparent car I was lying under, made of glass. Everything was like made of glass. That was how I perceived it as 4 years old. It was my mom standing there with my stepdad at the time, the neighbors, and they had called the rescue team to come and pick me out, and somebody was down trying to grab my foot and talk to me, and I could see him taking my foot and do like this, Thomas, are you there? But I couldn't feel it, and I wasn't in my body, but I was looking through my eyes, and I could see straight through this car I was lying underneath, totally knocked out. and I could hear everything. And this thing that I could hear everything confirmed later that it wasn't something I made up, or it wasn't a dream, or it wasn't something that my brain was fantasizing about, or anything. But I am under this car, and I can hear my mom talking to the other people, very concerned. She's crying, she's panicking, and I can hear the ambulance and the rescue crew is coming in the distance with their sirens on. They are arriving. And then in the middle of all this, while I'm lying underneath there and observing and listening to all this without being able to do anything about it, these two small beings, and I call them beings because I was 4 years old. I have no idea who they are, what they are, but I wasn't scared of them. They didn't scare me, but they were small people, like if you have a dwarf, but dressed in white. This white clothes they had on were like illuminating white light, not blinding light or mega like light showed. No, they were just illuminating light. Both of them, like they were standing in a light beam, sort of. But no matter where they moved or walked around the car, this light would always be around them. But one of them was standing next to my mom. I was saying to her name is Birgit. Birgit, don't worry, he'll be okay. And my mom just ignored that little dwarf down there. She ignored him. She didn't even look down. And I remember lying down there and thinking, that's actually rude, Mom. This person is trying to take care of you and help you and talking to you, and you're not even responding to it. I remember getting the feeling of not being angry, but being a little bit, that's not right. That's not right. She should look down and talk to him. But he kept talking to my mom and saying things to my mom, and don't worry, and it'll be okay. The rescuer came with a so-called jack lift to lift up the car. And one of the rescue people, I remember him saying, I got an issue with this one here, I need another jack lift. And then he said again, no, it works now. But the moment he said, I got an issue, one of them small beings went over and stood next to him and touched not the jack lift, but him. And the jack lift worked again. And he said, I got it now. And I can remember him like, his voice like, I got it, it's working now. And I remember it all and everything that the rescue guys said, and the neighbors said to my mom, and my mom said to my stepdad, and so on and so on and so on. So they get this car lifted up, and the moment that the emergency crew tried to pull me out, I kind of like get the feeling of a whoosh, and I'm coming back into my body, and I can feel my legs again. I haven't broke anything. I got a few bruises and that was all, but I was knocked out. But it was like coming back into my body again. The moment I came back into my body, those small beings that were there helping and assisting disappeared out of the blue, just disappeared. I remember afterwards asking my mom, of course, who were them two, were there fire people, the two small guys? And my mom looked at me and said, what small guys? Yeah, you stood there and you talked to Jens Peter and you said, oh, I hope he's gonna be okay, and I hope he ain't broken his back or anything, and can you see if he's bleeding? And Jens Peter was looking down at me to check out visually if he could see anything, and I brought her the whole conversation back from when I was knocked out, and she could confirm every word, and the same could my stepdad, that he said all those things, but the small beings, my mom don't remember them. My mom don't remember them at all. She never saw any small beings. And I said, it was those that had those white helmets and white clothes on. And I remember the helmets like, if how do I describe their helmets? It's like when you look at modern bicycle race, indoor race on a little track, those bike riders have these aerodynamic helmets. That's today they have these aerodynamic shape behind it's kind of a little bit that direction that their helmets were looking like, but they were wearing these helmets. That was why I, as a 4-year-old, thought it's some kind of rescue team, and they're here with their helmets on. But it wasn't a rescue team. They were something else that were there that day. That's for sure. And I remember what one of them said and what one of them answered right away after. They stood next to my mom and they were comforting my mom, trying to calm her down. And I was looking at them doing that, and one of them looked at me and said to the other being, "Can we take our helmets off now?" And the other one said, "No, he's not ready for that yet." And that was the last thing I heard them said. So that's kind of an experience where was it aliens? Was it what were they? What was the light that was constantly surrounding them? Was it some 80s modern clothes with lights in? What was it? But one thing was for sure. My mom and my stepdad and my neighbor on the other side, which was a driving instructor, teacher, they all confirmed to me every word I said that they have been talking about while I was knocked out onto that car. So that's kind of like my first experience with beings or aliens, because I'm not religious. I don't believe in God as such. I believe there's something way above us, and that's some of the things that we have started to look into now on American secret bases with the back engineering technology. And what is it that is above us? Is it those that actually have created us, or is there something higher above that? Is there a God, or is there not a God, or is it just advanced beings, an advanced species with way more technology and knowledge than we have? So that was my first experience. And I said in the beginning I would wait a little bit with talking about beings, but I had to put that one in first because that is one of my first experience that I can relate to. As in, if you have asked me as a 4-year-old, I would have said there was some funny firefighters in there. But if you ask me in my grown-up life now as a 45-year-old, I would say that was aliens. Definitely, they were aliens. They were not humans, that was for sure. I don't know what they were, but I wasn't afraid of them at 1 second. They kind of emanated some kind of energy that calmed you down, like you could just lie there and wait and observe your patients. You ain't in a hurry. It's kind of like the feeling, oh yeah, now the rescue team is coming. You've got no pain. You're just observing. That was kind of the feeling I had when they were near me. The moment I came back into my body, as I said before, and they disappeared, that feeling of being calm disappeared, and I started to be nervous, and of course I started crying, and I had the big cry when I came out of underneath the car, and my mom came and hugged me, and I squealed as a 4-year-old would do. But while they were there were no feelings. There was no good or bad. There was no pain. I was just there observing, like being calm, just like you're waiting on a traffic light. You know it's gonna be green. It might take 20 seconds, but you know it's gonna be green, and you just have to be patient and wait. That was the kind of feeling I had when they were there for the first time. Yeah, and I said the first time, we're gonna get back to that, because I later had a UFO experience, and I had been about 7 or 8 years old, and that was in 84, 85. I have to correct myself. The UFO, the alien experience I had as a kid, I was 4. That has been in 81. I think I mentioned it as 84. I'm sorry, that has been in 80 or 81. We just moved to Kalundborg at that time. My experience with the craft started in 84, and this is where it relates to what William Whitecrow has been talking about. Because I'm going to start with my experience and say I was out with my mom. We were going to visit my auntie and uncle in a town called Brøndby. They lived in an area called, I think it was Kisum. park. I think, yeah, Parken is it called, which is a multi-floor building with thousands of people living in that community out there. There's like 4, 5, 6 floors, and it's a big area they live in. We had a 200-meter walk from the car park up to the door entrance to the stairwell, and as we get about halfway up there, my mom starts to like pulling me faster and faster, and I'm like, whoa, mom, what are you doing? And she's like, we gotta get in now, go, you can run up, go run in that door now, quick. And she's hurrying, trying to pull me. I'm like, what's going on, mom? And one of the things I remember is she's saying, there's a war going on up there. And when she say up there, I look up right away, and I see this giant craft hanging just a few meters lower, and it would have hit the houses. And this craft were huge. We're talking 30 meters. It was blackish with a few grays, other color sticking out now and then. Not like camouflage, like we see military trucks with camouflage on. Not in that way, but I only saw the underneath of it, and they were hovering right above us. They were following us from the car to the entrance. And I was 4 years old. My world consisted at that time of that I was looking forward to get up to play with my uncle's marching model railway track he has built. And that was all I was interested in. And then I saw this giant thing on top, and I remember standing there and looking at it while my mom is pulling my arm, say, come on, and I'm just like, whoa, it's like seeing something amazing, how it's built and details, and I'm like sitting and looking. Imagine, I don't know how to compare it, but I can try. Imagine looking at a really nice artwork, one of them kinds with thousands of details, and you just can keep on finding new details. You're standing looking at that artwork. There's something there. Oh yeah, I see that little elephant over there. Oh yeah, I see that. Oh yeah, I can see that. That's a tree. Oh yeah, I see that. And that was the feeling I had when I looked up. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. Oh, look at that. And there's something in the middle. And look at them going into the middle. And is that what's that underneath? And I was standing there being excited. Really, like, whoa, excited. And my mom was panicking. And she said, that's nothing. It's just a jet. And there was a jet further up. There was, and I think it was a fighter jet of some kind, military jet. It flew really fast above us, but they were like far away above the UFO hanging over us. And I'm pretty sure that it was a military jet flying over. And my mom was pointing at the military jet, like trying to divert me from looking at the craft to the military jet and say, it's just a jet that's making that noise. Like trying to see if, I think she was trying to see if I also saw that one up there. She was trying to figure out, is it just me that's crazy? Or can he see it too? But my reaction to it, like standing and looking at this craft, and look at that, and look at that, and look at that, just like standing and looking at a really nice painting and see all the details, wow, and getting excited about it. That craft were hovering over us, and my mom managed to pull me up to the door and take me in, and I was like, I want to watch, Mom. No, we're definitely going in now. And we came up, and I remember my mom, when we came in, being like, have you looked outside, and go out and have a look, and they went out, look, there was nothing out there, nothing, and what are you talking about? And me, as a 4-year-old, I blasted it out. There was a big spaceship right above us. Yeah, it was huge, and we could see the antennas underneath. Remember, 4 years old. Kids speaks the truth. And my auntie and my uncle were looking at me like, oh, really, that's really interesting. And then they look at my mom, and my mom like, and she just said nothing. And so we didn't talk about that anymore that day. Not at all. We talked about it other times later, but we were basically laughed at our own family, and they didn't believe my mom either. I know she tried getting into it later and said, but I'm pretty sure we saw something, and they were just laughing at her. Yeah. Did you drive the car yourself? I made a little joke out of it. You ain't drunk, are you? And that's the way people laugh things off, and we were laughed off. But I remember it just as clear as day. That craft I have described, this is where William Whitecrow come in, because the craft he described fits exactly the description. And remember, it was in 84, 85 this went on, both for William and for me. And William did tell me that they had the capability to pick up people if they used a tractor beam or whatever they used, I don't know. But he said they have the capability in that craft to pick up people. So they probably had some technology on board, unless the technology is a mechanical feature called a ladder. That could be as well, but then they would have to land. But I think they had some technology on board. So what William described, that these 30-meter wide craft, the way he described it, it looked, besides the camouflage, it fits to the description of what William Whitecrow has been exposing what's going on in the 80s. So he's not the only one who possibly have seen the same craft. There have been others that might have seen the craft that could have been part of their program without even knowing it. So we're back to unknown CIA projects in the 80s. I do know that there is some abduction stories from the 80s also that also describes similar craft and being taken by a craft. The difference in the stories is how they have been taken. What some people explain is they've been lifted up in their bed in a tractor beam, and what other people have explained is that they saw this craft over them, and the next thing they remember is they were inside and they were doing stuff to them, they were paralyzed. People's experiences deviate a lot, but the common thing with their experiences is the craft they're talking about. Lots of people I have spoken to have described the same craft as I have seen, as William Whitecrow have explained about and disclosed. So I wonder how many other people actually have seen these crafts up that close as I have. And still to this day, me and my mom can have some good conversations about that day in Brøndby when that UFO came and my mom was pissing her pants and I was like I wanted to go out and play. Come on, that's gonna be fun. That was like, I felt like I wanted to be out there. I felt like I had to be there. I felt that there was a connection. I didn't understand why they were hovering above us. Normally when you see a craft you would say, oh, I saw something, they were flying from there to there. And they did like this in the air. We heard that before. That wasn't the case. They were above us. I looked up. It was right there when I looked up. I didn't see it arrive. I didn't hear it arrive. I didn't see it leave. I didn't hear it leave. I looked up. It was there. And that was how I saw it. But the common thread in it is the ship that people are experiencing, seeing, and talking about. One of the reasons for why I'm bringing this up again, because I've spoken about this in public before, is after the hearing in America, the right to laugh at people has been changed. So all of those that were laughing at us coming out in the 90s and in the 2000s, telling our stories from our life, because we want to share it with you, and then being laughed at and ridiculed. That time has changed now, so I think it's important for people to step forward and tell some of the things you have experiences with UFOs, or even if you have experiences with beings. I had a lot of other strange encounters also. I remember when I was a kid, I was sailing, what's in Danish, it's called optimistjolle. It's a tiny little boat with one sail on for kids. Sorry, I've been doing that for a few years. I was quite good at it, I remember. And I had reached that point where I was allowed to sail out alone in the area of Kalundborg Harbor, the inlet, not out of the inlet, but that thing that could be able to sail without an adult or a boat with you was like a big thing for us kids, because that meant that you were a little bit more grown and they trusted you. So I was out sailing and I went down to the industrial harbor in my little boat with a sail on and sailed around there for a little while and looking at all them big ships and sailing to the other harbor side. We had a big power plant there and you could sail all the way over there. So I did. What I didn't realize as a kid at that time was crossing the inlet was not allowed to. I did, and it took about a good hour to sail over there and back because I had to zigzag all the way. And anyway, I was told off for doing that. But on the way back, I'm out in the middle of the inlet where it's the deepest, and there are some pretty deep, big waves out there. And I am in this little 2-meter long boat on my way back. Suddenly, the waves around me are settling down around me like 20 meters around. There's still waves everywhere around. They're kind of like settling down. And it's like this, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel a shaking, a frequency, and I can see the water stand like this, starting to shake, and small clumps of water come up like when. Imagine when you're putting some sand on a vibrator and you're starting a researching frequency. You can see the sand vibrate. That's how the water was looking. It was vibrating around me, and in the water I could see a very, very, just barely visible light, tiny light, and I could just see it shining up. It was right underneath me, and I could see the light for a good 15-20 seconds underneath me, and 15 to 20 seconds is a very long time when you're sitting out in the middle, all alone of the inlet. You got minimum half an hour into the harbor on the other side. You don't know what's underneath you, and there's a light, and all the waves kind of like just disappeared around you. That was very, very weird. It has like, again, this kind of like seismic vibration, like pretty weird. And it was a circle around me. It was like I was standing still there. The wind was blowing, but I wasn't kind of moving. I was still in the middle of this field. If this field were moving with the boat, I don't know, but I had the feeling of standing still out there. And then it disappeared again, just as it came, like, and the wave came back, and I could feel like I have propulsion forward from the wind again. And I never ever found out what it was. I did tell my mom and my stepdad about it. And my stepdad said, yeah, it could have been a submarine. Kalundborg Inlet is it's an industrial inlet, and there's very deep in the one side. But the side I was in was just before the fisherboat harbor, and there's like maximum 5 meters depth in there. So I don't think there would have been a submarine underneath me in the inlet to the fishing area, harbor in Kalundborg. That's physically not possible, as I think a submarine is more than 5 meters tall. It wouldn't be possible. So something was down there, and I couldn't see what it was. But I have a lot of suggestions to what it was. As I said, somebody said it was a submarine. Somebody said it was a diver or something underneath me. That's very possible with a diver, which is his light, but it doesn't explain the circle around my boat and the seismic vibrations in the water and the waves that wasn't around my boat but everywhere else. The only thing I remember I didn't do, and this is funny because I was so focused on what's going on in the water, I never looked up. And I think this is where we as a human species sometimes forget. I'm sure if I have looked up, I might have had some more to add to my experience, but I never looked up, and I didn't thought of it one time, unfortunately, because I was focused on what was going on in the water underneath it. But just one of many weird experiences that I still haven't had an explanation for today. Another one I had was in the same city, Kalundborg. There was an old fortress next to our 5-tower church that is very famous for its 5 towers. Next to that one is an old fortress. It's ruins of a fortress, castle, I think, from the Middle Ages, and it's public. It's what we call in England, you would say it's part of the national heritage. And it's a public area. You can walk in there, see all the old walls, and see the area, and actually walk around in the building. That is not building, but just some few walls standing left there from Middle Age. Anyway, I was walking along that area on my way back, and I remember I've been down as a voluntary at the local radio station where I worked as a voluntary by taking phones and writing down music requests. So, that was what I was doing that day, and I went back earlier than I have planned, because my mom had a little bit of row of me the other day for coming back late, and I had to go to school, and so I went back home like 10 minutes before I had to go, so sure I didn't come home late. I come to this part where the fortress is, and these some of the walls are 1 meter tall, some of the walls are 2 meter tall. It's a little bit different. Walking along it, and just suddenly this illuminating light is rising from behind one of the walls in that old fortress, and the wall is about 1 meter, 2 meter tall, and I can see there's a light behind the other side of the wall. And my first thought is somebody's in there with a torch, of course, and it's dark, and somebody's just in there. It's a public area. Everybody can go in there. I don't hear anybody though, and I just walk. I see this happening ahead of me, like 50 meters ahead of me. So I'm still got 20-30 seconds to get up to where the light is. And as I'm walking, this light starts to rise up, and I'm now seeing a light hovering above the wall in the air. And I'm thinking, oh, that's a funny torch he had. It can create like a circle that actually stands still in the air. It's kind of cool. And I'm still looking at this thing. That's pretty cool. I want a torch like that. It's like, remember seeing as a kid the Batman film, and they do the Batman logo in the skies with the big projectors. It's kind of like you are throwing something, projecting something, and this was a light projected that looked like disc in the air. It was pretty cool, just hanging up there in emanating light. That's kind of the feeling I remember I had. It was a pretty good feeling. But as I'm getting closer and closer to that light, it raises higher and higher up. And as I'm right next to it, and this one is at least 10-15 meters up in the air, I realize that that's not a torch, and I realize there's nobody there, and it's not one of them light projectors as you see in the Batman movies that's projecting a Bat logo. It's nothing like that. That light hanging there as I passed by it and stopped up and I looked at it for 3-4 seconds. I remember a flashlight coming out, and then I ran home. I got scared, I ran straight away when that flash came. I don't know what the flash was. Here's the thing. I came home, and my family can vote for that too. I came home to my mom, and my mom was furious. You promised you would be home before 7, and I knew I left 5:45. So I knew I had 1 hour and 15 minutes, and I said, "Yeah, I'm home now. I've been running. I saw this light down the fortress, and it just shut off." And my mom was like brushing it away, like, "I told you to be home. Didn't even listen to me. You had to be home before 7. It's 7:15 now." No. It cannot be more than 6:15 because I left 5:45. And I remember sitting at the radio station telling my colleague in there, "I'm gonna go a little bit earlier today. Is that okay? Because I have to be home in time." My mom got pissed last time, so she was like, "Yeah, you better do that." It was 5:45 when I left. the radio station. I had 20-minute walk home, and I was about 5 minutes from home. So I have been there at 6 o'clock, and I ran the last way. But when I was at my mom, it was 7:15. My mom did first thought I was just spinning a yarn on her. And I have been out playing with some of my friends, which I think is a typical mom reaction to experiences like this when people talk about stuff like this. I think that's very typical just to think they're telling you a story. I have had a lot of experiences in silence, but it's not like something that happens every day and every week that we constantly talk about. There could be many months between. And when an experience come up again, it's like the first one ain't forgotten, but it's not fresh either. So yeah, you're spinning me a yarn. You're spinning me a yarn, she said. So I said, no, I'm not, and I'm sorry, and she was like, don't do it again. And we didn't really talk more about that until the day after, and she came and asked me, so, what was it you said down the fortress that was there? You said something about a light. And I told her again, and this time she was listening. Yeah. I went down and this light was hovering up. I first thought it was a torch, and then I thought it was like a projector, and then just shut off and with this blink, and I got scared and I ran home because I didn't know what it was. So I am wondering where that 1 hour and 15 minutes went and what happened. Personally, I have an idea, but it might be far-fetched to sit and put ideas out when you can't back it up with anything at all. And that's the thing we often stand with, the big issue. We can't back it up. But why go out in public? I know there's still people out there who will laugh themselves to death when they're sitting and listening to me now. And they were sitting and making fun of me and ridiculing me and telling me that he can't even speak English and why should I listen to him and he have no clue what he's saying. And he's just some weirdo that's been doing drugs. No, I've never done drugs, and I'm absolutely not a weirdo. But I'm not normal either. That's what I would used to say. But I do understand people's reaction. You can't force anybody to believe. One of the other experiences I had quite a few. I remember I was living in a caravan at one of my former friends' farm. I lived in a caravan there for about 3.5 years at first. That was a lifestyle I chose at the time, not a lifestyle I live anymore, and it was a great time. But this friend of mine was absolutely not a believer in UFOs, and especially not in aliens. He's a scientist and works at the university, so everything has to be documented by science before a guy like him will even listen to you. So he's one of them that I absolutely don't want to spend 1 second talking about these things. But I could talk with him about everything if I could, and that I did. So you realize what you can talk to people about and what you can. But anyway, I was living on this farm, and I was I'm sorry. I woke up at about 2 or 3 o'clock at night. I remember. It was in August, and we just had the first few days where it weren't really hot anymore. They started to be a little bit windy and like autumn weather. And I remember going to bed, and it was pretty cold, and I turned the heating on to stay warm. And I woke up with like, I was like shuddering, shaking, and realized why am I shaking? It's fucking hot in here. And I went up, and sorry for swearing. I went up and turned the heating off. I was like dying and said, what? Whoa! It's never ever that hot. I've never experienced anything, and it wasn't even on full blow the gas heater in it. And while I'm standing there, I did notice that the sheep outside and the cows on the farm next door were making an awful lot of noise. And I was like just waking up, like, what's going on, and listening. I opened the door to my caravan, got on my little decking outside and looking. And then I realized it's even hotter outside than it was inside. And like, what on earth is going on? And I literally had to take my t-shirt off. And I was standing out there only wearing my underwear. And it's hot. It's really, really hot. And at the same time, the cows on the field is gathered in a big circle, and they are like going berserk, and they're all trying to get into the middle of the circle. All of them are trying to get into the middle of the circle while they're circling each other. The sheep on the farm right next to my caravan is basically touching the fencing to the stream. They were panicking and running around in the far end, up in the far corner of the field, and they were really making a. You could hear on the way they were making sounds. They were panicking. They were really, really scared. Something had scared them. And I'm standing up there like half awake and half asleep and thinking, oh, it's that stupid fox again. The fox is here, and it's the fox that took the chickens also. And that was my first reaction. And then I kind of like wake up and think, whoa, is there something wrong? That cows wouldn't do that to a fox. Sheep might run away, but they wouldn't panic like that unless it was a bigger animal. And I couldn't see any animals out there. I had my big torch and I looked out and around. I couldn't see any other animals than the cows and the sheep. Nothing out there. Pretty weird. And then as I'm standing up there and observing all this going on with the animals, from one second to another, the wind starts blowing again. The heat that was there was like disappeared in less than 20 seconds, from being like 24, 27 degrees, I would estimate minimum, to like down to 12, 13 again as it was before. And it happened in an instant. And that was when I stood out there. So whoa, ooh! I felt the cold coming with the wind. I started to shake right up. I've just been standing there and sweating my guts off, man. It's fucking hot, man. I have no idea, but the moment the wind came and it got cold again, all the animals stopped making noise. All of them. There was not one sound from them again that evening. So that was another experience. I don't know what to put into it, but definitely there were some things in it that made me think of UFOs. If there hadn't been for the heat that was there, if definitely, and I woke up, I was dying. I was really, really roasting, swimming in my sweat in there. It was so hot, and that was at 2 or 3 o'clock at night, and it should be 12 degrees outside. I go outside, it's even hotter outside, and I'm like just realizing what's going on. The fact that the wind came and it got cold again, and the heat and the cold changed, made me believe that there must have been something that had a heat source around us. We have had goats that has died before and sheep that have died before. We have never had mutilated sheep or goats, and I won't connect the death to necessarily UFOs, but just as much as natural things happens, they get sick and disease. There were no dead animals at that day. There were no like mutilated animals. The question is, and this is what I don't know, is all the animals there? I chose not to tell my landlord and friend at the time about it, because I knew the first thing he would do, he would use it to make fun of me, say ha 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 ha, and you have been doing a little bit too much of this and that, ha ha, and it's all funny, and I did not need it, that kind of opinion at that time, so I chose not to tell him anything. They never said anything about sheep missing or anything, or neither did the neighbor telling if any cows were missing. But I can't figure out really what was happening, because I did look up. There was nothing up there. There was nothing. But I always had the feeling that there was something above us that was creating this meteorological disturbance in changes in temperatures from being wind still and like 27-30 degrees to having a normal wind blowing and going down to 12-13 degrees within 20 seconds. That's that kind of changes can only be created with use of energy. Energy that has a heat source or generates a heat source of some kind. So I am left a little bit with that experience, what was going on, but what was it that the animals were scared of, and why were they gathered in a circle and all fighting to get into the middle of that circle? That was of course protection, but protection from what? That was something that I couldn't see out there, or up there, I don't know. But again, it felt like the experience I had when I was 7-8 years old with the UFO in Brøndby. It felt like it was right above me and it was just hovering there. But this time I had the same feeling, but I couldn't see it. But I had the feeling it was there, and it was that created that disturbance in heat and in wind, and I don't know how, and I'm not gonna go try figure out how they did it, but I'm pretty sure that that was what happened that day, because that wasn't natural. I have had some other experiences also. I would like to get back in another podcast with some interactions with beings, experiences, but I would like to get back with that one later, because I would personally and mentally have to prepare myself to talk about it in public. I have spoken of it before, but it hasn't been easy. But the only reason I'm bringing it up again and go forward with my experiences with beings is only because we have had that hearing in America that has confirmed that these things that I have seen are real. And these are the same things that I'm talking about. And I think it's about people out there come out with their experiences and tell about it openly if you have seen it and you know that what you saw wasn't Venus or Mars or swamp gas or weather balloons or helicopters or aeroplanes. I urge you to come and tell your story, and you can find my contact information on my profile or here on YouTube or on Facebook, and I would love to hear from you as well if you got experiences with UFOs. I think it's important to bring up the past, and I will spend the next few days on digging up in the past and what experiences people have had in the past that are similar to what I have had, that are similar to what William Whitecrow is talking about. Next podcast will be about beings, interaction with beings on a not voluntary basis, if I can express this in that way. So I'm hoping you will join me in my next little podcast, number 3, in a week, and hear my experiences with beings, because it's important to remember everybody laughed at us when we spoke about this. Everybody. Some people still do. Those that are still laughing at us, I don't give a about that in any kind of way. They can laugh all they will, but there are millions of people out there now that have held themselves back for years in fear of being ridiculed. You're the ones I want to hear from. If you got a story to tell, an experience you would like to tell us, so please don't hesitate to contact me. You can find my contact information, as I said, on my profile and on YouTube. I'm going to end this podcast for now, and I want to thank you for listening to me and listening to my story. I have told everything as it is and as I remember it, and I could give 5 pots of if anybody out there is laughing at me anymore. What's important for me is 2 things. I know the truth, and I can give it to you that want to know the truth. That's the two most important things. Everything else doesn't matter. Thank you for listening to me today. Thank you.